Folks, welcome to True Democrats. It is November 9th, and it is official. Joe Biden is the president-elect of the United States. Can't believe I don't have I believe it's the 46th president of the United States. Won by something like 5 million votes. But that is the highest vote total in the history of this country. I'm glad to hear, and I believe about 66% of the registered voters voted, which is, listen, it's depressing when these news outlets tell us that it's less than 50% of people are voting. I mean, it just goes to show that way too many of us take this country for granted, take the kind of government we have for granted. Listen, things can get bad in this country, but believe me, they're coming in here. The immigrants are coming into this country for a reason. That's because their countries are a lot worse. But we fail to see that sometimes, and it reflects on the voting numbers, the percentages of people that voted. But this is the highest vote total, I think, since World War II, I believe. I understood. I'd have to check that out and take a look at this again. But and with good reason. I mean, we've had one of the biggest disasters to ever set foot in the White House. The biggest scam, just a horrible mark on this country. But listen, as they said in The Godfather, we need these civil wars every once in a while just to clear the air, just to understand. And I think it opened our eyes to a lot of things. We knew there was a lot of racists. We knew there was a lot of white supremacists. There's a lot of, we know the millionaires and billionaires want power for themselves. And we saw to what extent they would go for it by turning a blind eye to the armed so-called militia taking over state capitals. I mean, these last 4 years really should have opened up our eyes, and the political family, the political institutions, or I should say political parties that are running this country have to open their eyes and take a look. When the smoke is cleared, and it's pretty much clear, we need to see where everybody stands. And I hope that Joe Biden is taking a look at what's going on. This country is not the same since he left the vice president's office after Obama left. This country is not the same when he was working in the Senate as a senator from Delaware. His political opponent, the Republican Party, has changed completely from what it used to be 20, 30, 40 years ago. And he needs to be aware of that if he wants to get anything governed. I was quite depressed with the Democratic results, the results for the Democratic Party in the Senate. They had an unbelievable opportunity to take those Senate seats from the Republicans, and I think it was just a half-hearted effort. It was just absurd, especially when Joe Biden knows the easiest way, and nothing's easy, but the easiest way to get things done is to have a Democratic Senate, not at your disposal. That's a poor phrase to put, but to have a Democratic Senate to help you take your agenda and make it reality. Now, even if the Democrats, I think the best the Democrats can hope for now is a 50-50 shot at the Senate, and that way Kamala Harris, as the vice president, will have the tie-breaking vote. But if they lose, and even if they're one down in the Senate, Mitch McConnell is going to make things difficult, very difficult. We all know, and I've stated before, we have to remember Mitch McConnell, when President Obama got into office, Mitch McConnell's statement was that his mission is to make sure that President Obama is a one-term president, which blows my mind. I mean, you have to think, if you're in the Senate and you're the Senate majority leader, your number one goal should be, how can I make this the best for this country? Well, maybe he thinks getting rid of President Obama is the best for this country. It's not. It's probably the best for the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations and banks that totally collapsed this country and got President Obama elected. But it also shows what Joe Biden is going to deal with and where the Republican Senate is aiming at and what their goals are and what is most important to them. And it's good to know. You have to be able to know before you go in and start throwing your agenda around or try to get your agenda enacted. I was watching his speech Saturday night, his acceptance speech, and I'm thinking this is taking way too long. I mean, just get right to the point that we got business at hand, and this is a humbling experience, and we put a lot of faith and trust in him. But he just went on, and I said, okay, stop being a party pooper and a party spoiler. Let this guy who tried to run, this is his third time and finally came with the big prize, let him enjoy. Let him come up there and be exuberant in this moment of victory, which he should be, and this country should be. But then he said something that kind of shook me a bit. And I'm thinking, oh no, here we go again. The Democrats have learned nothing in the last 20 or so years. But he said,
and to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans.
Not how the Republicans view him and how the Republicans do not view the Democratic Party. Because the only way the Republicans have been behaving in the last 20, well, let's make this the last 28 years, was to make the Democrats out to be enemies of this country, to make healthcare enemies of this country, to make the millionaires, billionaires paying their fair share of taxes the enemy of this country. And the Republicans have stooped to every low-level antic to try to get it done. Joe Biden has got to realize, and he's got to think back to when Clinton became president, that right off the bat, the Republicans started throwing smears at him, trying to throw conspiracy theories at him. And okay, listen, Clinton had a lot of baggage coming out of Arkansas. So there was something there for the Republicans to dig their claws into. But they started, well, let's first go back again. Clinton had the House and the Senate democratically controlled. So he was able to get his agenda pretty much through the legislature. And of course, it was a 50-50 even tie in the Senate, and Al Gore had the decisive vote in order for the taxes. This was during the budget. This was during the budgetary vote to get the budget for this country. And Clinton raised the prices, to raise the taxes on the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations. And of course, the Democrats are scared out of their wits about it. So they came down to a 50-50 split in the Senate with Al Gore making the difference vote, the vote for it. And of course, when the millionaires and billionaires have to pay their taxes, they had the greatest economic boon this country's ever seen since World War II. But it was used against the Democrats as being the highest taxes raised. And this comes back to the Democrats not knowing how to defend their policies, not knowing how to phrase a policy to deliver to the American people, to say this is beneficial to you, and this is why it's working. And yet they just fall back down and let the Republicans attack when all their lies are just that, lies. But these so-called red states vote for these Republicans. And of course, the Republicans took over the Senate and the legislature in the midterms during Clinton's first term. And they started the bogus investigations. Now, this is the other thing that the Republicans, is going to happen. They're bogus investigations, made up lies. They're saying that the Democrats are criminals and they're going to make up investigations that lead nowhere. This Whitewater investigation that the Republicans started led nowhere. But luckily for them and bad for the country, Clinton was having a little comedy with his intern. And of course, they caught wind of this, the independent investigator, to look into Clinton's Whitewater deals, and what the Republicans called it was shady deals and anything to destroy Clinton's reputation. But they couldn't find anything. So instead, they had this intern and just threw Clinton's name in the mud, brought an impeachment trial over it. There was no implication of any kind of attack against America's security at all. This was just some games with an intern that the Republicans brought as an impeachment trial. And so that's the way that went. And of course, based on that, you can kind of say that Al Gore lost his chance at the presidency. He won the popular vote, but Bush and the Republicans pounded in the American people that we need to kind of bring honor and respect back to the White House. And boy, does that sure seem like a joke now. And of course, the Republicans were in charge during the Bush years in total collapse. This country came under attack. We invaded the wrong country based on false premises. The CIA tried to tell us that. They gave away CIA operatives. We let the terrorist Osama bin Laden free. And they allowed the banks to steal our money, gamble our money, and we had an economic collapse to go with it. And that's how Obama came into power, and of course how the Democrats, more than anything, backed into power they backed into power basically because the Republicans were so poor at governing that they retook the House and the Senate. Now, with the Republicans' diminished power in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who again, this was the time when Obama became elected, stated that it was his duty to make sure that President Obama was going to be a one-term president. So, with their hands somewhat tied, Obama sent the Democrats through the legislature to enact the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. And during each step, the Republicans denounced it, called it names, said it was going to decimate the American economy. They knew all about decimating the American economy. You would think people would listen. And of course they did. Why? Because there was no brushback by the Democrats, nobody retorting, nobody challenging these Republican assaults. That's the number one issue with me with the Democratic Party. Nobody stands up to these Republicans, and I'm not sure why. But even when this Obamacare was enacted, you had conservative pollsters taking polls of people all across these conservative states, no less, to try to get information how bad this Obamacare was. And to their chagrin, everybody said they needed it. They wanted it. They don't want it to disappear, which totally destroyed the whole Trump agenda when he campaigned to get rid of Obamacare. You get rid of Obamacare and you're going to be in big trouble with your constituents. It's amazing that these Democrats do not challenge these Republicans on these issues. But again, these names stick. When the Republicans pounding that the Affordable Care Act was a disaster, that it was going to be a disaster for the economy, for your health care, for getting rid of your doctors, everything a lie. But it got them back control of the House and the Senate. So with this in mind, Joe Biden has to be aware. He has to say, okay, this is what the Republicans are going to do to me. This is what they're going to make sure that they're going to try to stop my agenda every inch of the way. So what do I do? That's the big question of what Joe Biden has to ask himself on day one when he gets sworn in as the 46th president of the United States. The first thing he needs to do is to create a political war room in the West Wing. 12 people from all over the country, a dozen or so, and to come up with key phrases, key slogans, key everything to go and reiterate how these policies, the Democratic policies, are going to help A, create jobs, B, move us further into the future, help workers, help the air, help the planet, pollution, everything. They have to come up with catchy phrases that won't lose the attention of these red state voters. Then they have to go in And day one, they have to start going into the states of all these Republican incumbents that are up in 2022, and they got to start pounding them for not being on the side of the workers. For instance, start talking about Mike Lee in Utah, or Rand Paul in Kentucky, about how they're anti-wage growing, how in capitalism, the wages are supposed to grow when there's capitalism. There's supposed to be a demand for higher wages to get better workers. Yet you can't do that in the corporate era. Corporate suppresses wages. You have to say, okay, Mike Lee in Utah, Rand Paul in Kentucky is suppressing your wages. These are all middle class, below middle class people that live in these states. You have to explain to them they're hurting their livelihood by their policies. You have to start that on day one and pound it every day, and do that to all the incumbents. I believe there's 20 Republican incumbents up for election. These are hard Republicans in hard. They're not the big headliners as this election was with Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. But we have to start planting the seeds, and you have to make way for a better agenda. We have to talk about taxes. The only way to get anything done, and this is why the Republicans collapse, this country collapses when Republicans are in charge, and that is because they give a free giveaway to the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations in taxes. We have to change that, and Biden and this political war room have got to say the millionaires and billionaires have to give back to this country. We need to build our infrastructure. They have to pay the price for that. We ask the middle class and poor to pay with their lives to defend this country overseas. The least we can do is ask the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations to pay for this building of the infrastructure, which they use the most. So this is to benefit them as well. But you have to phrase it. You have to be able to come up with something to keep these red state voters' attentions, and you have to use it. And every time the Republicans tell you that your policy is going to be a disaster, you have to go and attack. You have to confront. And you have to be able to say, no, the Green Deal is not going to destroy any jobs. It's going to create more jobs. The coal industry is on its way out. Everybody knows that. This is the 21st century. And the Democrats didn't do that when Trump was campaigning the first time in 2016. It blows my mind. They have to learn to attack, to stand up. And what you do is you take the initiative. Now you start saying we need the Green Deal. We need clean air to breathe, more jobs. We need to take, instead of the manual blue-collar labor, we got to start educating. We have to build our education system. That takes money, not tax cuts. You're playing the Republicans' game. You don't talk about tax cuts. You talk about we need our tax money to go in this. We need the millionaires and billionaires to pay their taxes. We need to build up our schools. That's going to take tax money. We need the millionaires and billionaires to give back to this country. They need educated employers. They need to pay to enhance the education of this country. That's what this war room is going to be all about. Oh, and Democrats, again, the Republicans just give you all the ammunition that you need. In this war room, you tack up on a billboard when you walk in, reminding everybody in there that whenever the Republicans are in charge, we get attacked by terrorists, that we get attacked by pandemics, that the Republicans give away CIA operatives, that they lie about an invasion of a country by the United States military solely for the oil fields and the rise in Halliburton stock prices, and that we have economic collapse, that they allow the banks to decimate this economy, to steal and gamble with our money. And that should go into every one of these red states. Every time you talk, before you come up and say, oh, what about, we need the millionaires and billionaires to pay their dues to this country so that we can build an infrastructure, so we can build schools and give our raises to teachers and give them training on top of that. You said you remember the greatest threat to this country is the Republican Party. Rand Paul was there when he allowed these terrorists to attack this country and did nothing. He was there and knew about this pandemic that came in and killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and did nothing. He was there when he was part of the Republican Party that gave away CIA operatives that even Ronald Reagan, the great deficit king himself, said was a traitorous act upon this country. Every day for 2 years, you got to pound it into these red states every day so that you have at least a chance to go in there and campaign for a Democratic opponent and get them to have a chance to win. And I think you can win because you got middle class and under middle class, lower middle class citizenry there who are only getting hurt by Republican policies. Mississippi, Alabama, these seats are up next year, and the Democrats are scared to go in there. But you have to start planting the seeds now. And you're not going to get an agenda done. Not with this Republican Party. You're going to give away too much already because you're not as tough as the Republican Party. You're not as heartless as the Republican Party. You're not going to get anything done. You have to think long term. You're going to have to think 2 years down the line, and you have to think about getting the Senate back to the Republicans and also help your House Democrats and start painting the Republicans for what they are, which it's amazing the Democrats haven't done in the last 15, 20 years. But that's the key of a political war room in the White House, which you need. I mean, it's only for survival. It's for survival, and it's also the only way to get your agenda across. The other thing you have to do is you have to beware and you have to counterattack this advantage that the Republicans have, and that's Fox News or Fox propaganda, the party channel. It's not news at all. It's the party channel. And they fall in line, every time. And this is the worst president this country's ever seen, a disaster, a thief, a criminal. And the Fox propaganda fell right in line, attacking Democrats, attacking the New Deal, the Green New Deal, attacking taxes. They attack everything. You need to be able to counter that. You need to be able to show what phoniness, to remind people that everybody on Fox propaganda was saying it's okay in the middle of a pandemic to take the family out to eat dinner, that it was okay, maybe your grandparents will go and die, but we need to get the economy going again. Remember that Fox propaganda wanted to sacrifice your grandparents and parents. Also remember they wanted to open the schools again. They were willing to sacrifice your children. So you need to remind all the Fox viewers of this. So when you're pounding, a twofold front, a two-horned attack, one attacking the Republican incumbents in their state, and the other you got to attack Fox News and make them sound less legitimate than they are, even though they advance these conspiracy theorists and all this other stuff. But that's what they did with the media. They call it the liberal media, which it is. It's the liberal media. It's liberty, free press. Of course, it's the liberal media, but they've established themselves to get facts, to follow up on articles and on stories, and to get backing up. Fox propaganda doesn't even allow for that. They allow butchering of video and remaking of video and of video stories, and they're so corrupt, this Fox propaganda. You need to make people aware of that and attack them also. It's the only way that you're going to have some breathing room and have a chance to win the midterm elections. And instead of losing, the Republicans are going to be after the House. So that they can have the House and the Senate, you have to be able to protect against that. So that's what you have to come up with in order to get a Democratic majority in the Senate and keep a Democratic majority in the House. And that's the only way you're going to get your agenda across. But you cannot think of the Republicans as your opponents. They're not there. They're not there to play fair. They can't play fair. All their policies are against the well-being of America. They prove it. Every time the Republicans are in charge, and you can remind the voters this as well, every time the Republicans are in charge, the economy collapses, jobs are lost, we have terrorists attack us, pandemics attack us. Remind everybody that when the Republicans are in charge, our life changes, but for the worst. We now have 2-hour lines at airports. We have to take off our belts and our shoes because the Republicans didn't do their job and allowed a terrorist attack on this country. We now have to wear masks everywhere because they allowed a pandemic to come through this country. That has to be a phrase. That has to be a saying. Every time the Republicans are in charge, they change this country for the worst. And we have the proof. We have the mask for it, and we have the airport lines for it. That's what Joe Biden has got to be thinking about, and that's what you have to fight back. And this is the time. You can't wait anymore. People are talking about how bad government is. It's not the government. It's the Republican Party. But worse than that is the Democrats who don't fight and don't stand up to these Republicans. You could be doing a lot more winning. So that's what I was thinking about during this Biden speech. And let's just hope that somebody, one of his advisors, starts saying we have to, first and foremost, not China, not Russia. We got to start thinking about the Republican Party and what we got to do about them. Guys, stay safe out there with this pandemic. Wear your masks. Stay home if you can. Be careful at work. God bless America. The dark Trump era chapter is over. But a lot of work to get done if we want to rebuild this country in the Biden era. Thank you for listening and tuning in. Please visit my website where you can catch some of my blogs at TrueDemocratsUSA.com. We also have our Picking Up America Again t-shirts. That's the whole idea for Joe Biden and his administration, but you can't pick America up by yourself. We need the Senate and the House in Democratic hands as well. You can get a t-shirt there for $25 each, free shipping. And if you get a chance, leave a comment in this for this podcast, or you can email me. The email address is on the website. And God bless America and Godspeed. Thank you very much. Good night.